animals are being factory farmed. The workers in these warehouses that are falsely described as farms are being factory farmed. And the consumers are being factory farmed. When you can take the power back 3 times a day with your diet, that is a societal shift that will truly reinvent society 100%. And they're aware of that. The world's first and only free vegan animal rights streaming television network, which is right behind me on the screen. Now I go around all over the place and I go liquid meat to people, and they throw me out of their homes.
Welcome to the Viva Vegan podcast with me, Faye. My guest this month is Velez-Mitchell, a television and social media journalist with decades of experience behind her. She specialised in vegan lifestyles, animal rights, addiction, and social justice. She's a New York Times best-selling author, a former CNN headline news host, and founder of Unchained TV. So Jane, thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
We're going to just go back to the kind of beginning. Now, you grew up in Manhattan near Carnegie Hall. Can you tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like?
Oh, my childhood was fabulous. My mom was from Puerto Rico. She was a showgirl who was the last of the vaudevilles, played the Palace Theater on Broadway doing the Five-A-Days, which were the live performances in between movies, the early movies. And she was even shot out of a cannon. I actually did a documentary on her called Anita Velez Dancing Through Life. My dad was Irish, and he was a Madison Avenue advertising executive straight out of Mad Men. Never saw a pair of jeans. He was this pipe-smoking advertising executive. So they were an interesting pair. They met because they were both great dancers. And their whole thing in life was to stop traffic when they did their ballroom dancing. And they did indeed. They had a lot of cocktail parties, and that probably got me started on the road to alcoholism. I'm 28 years sober, and I always say my worst day sober is better than my best day drunk. Luckily, I never got a DUI, but it was a problem, and I consider it a miracle that I was able to put it down one day at a time for the last 28 years. But I had a great childhood. I mean, it was very showbiz. My mother always had these performers coming in, flamenco dancers and jazz dancers and Russian ballerinas. We had a whole group of Russian ballet dancers that were always at the house. And my dad had all his advertising friends and sort of these Nescafe societies, what my mother used to call them, cafe society types, some of whom were European and who purported to have titles, which I always doubted even as a child. But suffice it to say, it was a very glamorous, showbizy, fun upbringing, and I wouldn't trade it in for the world. They didn't know from like trick-or-treating on Halloween. I don't know if you do that in England, but their idea of a party for me was to invite their adult friends over and grab some martinis and Play-Doh. But all in all, I wouldn't change it for the world. They were great parents, and I think in a way their message was figure it out on your own. And maybe that's why I became a journalist, because when you're a journalist, you go into a situation, it's chaos in your mind. You don't know who, what, when, where, why, how, and you have to figure it out and put it together in a short period of time. So I thank them for not being helicopter parents and trying to fix every little problem I had in life. Their attitude was like, you figure it out. And as I get older and older, I become more appreciative of it.
Yeah, I guess it gives you a good foundation, doesn't it? I mean, with journalism as well, you're always kind of trying to figure out the truth and what's going on, you know, behind the facades of things. And I guess having that figure it out for yourself, you become quite self-independent, and it's a really good, it's harder when you're younger because you need some boundaries sometimes and things, but as you get older, it's a good sort of grounding, I suppose.
And I would like to say that my mom, who was from the island of Vieques in Puerto Rico, it's a separate island, but it's part of the Commonwealth. She was the original animal rights activist. When she was a child in Vieques, which is famous for the wild horses and the beautiful beaches, she had what she thought was a pet pig or a friend pig. And one day she came home as a young child and the pig had been slaughtered for food and she fainted. And when she came to, she shunned meat from that time on. So she came to New York at the height of the Great Depression, pulled herself up by her bootstraps, formed a Latin dance troupe. Her partner was a prima ballerina from Russia, so they would both dance at nightclubs and hotels, etc. But she maintained her meatless behavior throughout her life, and my dad, who was raised on corned beef and cabbage, switched over as well. So we actually thought of ourselves as kind of vegetarians. The word vegan wasn't really around at that time, but we weren't. We ate fish, we had eggs, and we had dairy, but we were at least aware that animals didn't fall from trees, and I never saw like a slab of meat in my house growing up, and I thank my mother for that. She was also very avant-garde. She was doing yoga in the 40s when nobody knew what that was. She was one of the first hyphenates, calling herself Anita Velez-Mitchell, not just taking my dad's name, which is why, even though I was born Jane Mitchell, I added my mother's name as well, Jane Velez-Mitchell. So I really learned a lot from her, and her ultimate message was, life's a cosmic joke, and we don't know the punchline until we die. So I try to keep that in mind, especially when I see the horrific violence and cruelty inflicted on billions of animals. I'm so overwhelmed by it. I try to do every day as much as I can, but I also know that when this temporary existence is over, we'll learn more about what's going on. And I just pray that all those animals who die are in a much better place, experiencing euphoria and joy. And I hang on to that, that keeps me going.
I mean, what's one of the first memories that you have of loving animals, and really fostering that compassion for them?
Well, it's interesting because it's a complete dichotomy. When I was a kid, I got a dog. One of my mother's showbiz friends, the down and out pool shark. Is that speciesist to say pool shark? Yes, probably. Pool hall player, who was really a character, came in with a little dog that he found in a bar. And I had that dog, Mr. Monday was his name. And I was just in love with that dog. I was an only child, growing up on the 9th floor in Midtown Manhattan with a whole bunch of adults who were off on their own, kind of self-involved. And then one day I went to school. I was going to professional children's school because my mom was in showbiz, so I went to an acting type school. And I came home from school and Mr. Monday was gone. And I said, "Where's Mr. Monday?" And the lies started. It turned out that my dad, we were moving to a fancier apartment from 58th Street between 6th and 7th to 57th and 7th, the Briarcliff, right across from Carnegie Hall. And my dad had basically said, the dog's got to go because we got wall-to-wall carpeting. And it was devastating to me. To this day, I would say it's one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. I lost my brother, my best friend, somebody who loved me unconditionally. Didn't matter where my mother was from, because my dad hung around with a lot of social climbers, so you can imagine. And it didn't matter. He just loved me, and I loved him. And when he was taken away from me, that's when I became an animal rights activist. I was probably 9, but it did really destroy my relationship with my parents to a certain degree because I didn't trust them. I knew they were lying. So the first thing I did when we moved to our fancy new apartment was put a big giant hole in that wall-to-wall carpeting by knocking over a lamp and letting it sit there until it burned a hole in that carpet. So that was my revenge. But everything I do, in a way, is for Mr. Monday. And ironically, and I think somebody upstairs, you've got to find the meaning when it comes your way. This rescuer found a dog, and they tried to find the owner for a long period of time. They couldn't. And she said, "Hey, my 3 dogs that I'd had, mostly Chihuahua mixes, had passed recently. Last Christmas was the last one, of old age. They had great lives, and I was dogless." And she said, "Will you take this dog in?" And I said, "Yes." And along comes Sunday, because it was on a Sunday. But Sunday is almost the spitting image of Mr. Monday. And the same curl of the tail, like the Jack Russell with the same spotting. And when I took one look at her, I was like, wow. So anyway, I feel like some sense of closure with that. And then somebody else got another dog who looks just like Sunday. They were trying to dump her at the shelter, and the shelter, believe it or not, turned her away because they're overloaded. And that's horrific in itself. And she called me and I said, that was a rescue group. I said, bring her on down. So now she looks just like Sunday. Her name is Wednesday. She's a beagle mix, and they're the hit of the neighborhood because they're just so darn cute.
That's sweet. That's really cute. And have you got room for any more, or is that it for now?
Well, I have a kitty cat who was rescued from a gutter in Queens during a snowstorm, Queens, New York. Yeah.
Fair enough. So let's go into your kind of journalism career. I mean, how did that be, like, when did that start, and what was the kind of catalyst for you?
Well, I went to New York University and I graduated with a degree in journalism, BA in broadcast journalism. And, I had been a protester since I was a kid. Like, basically, I haven't changed that much. My high school yearbook page is an animal rights news story that I cooked up. And because I had been interviewed quite a few times by journalists when I was doing various kinds of protests, I decided to just, without much thinking, I just checked off journalism. And then I checked off broadcast journalism because I've been interviewed on TV. So my first job was in Fort Myers, Florida. Believe it or not, this was in 1977. I did the first live broadcast they ever had, remote live. The news director said to me, you're going to go down to the courthouse and you're going to go talk at the same time as the anchor in the newsroom. And I was like, what? How? But, it was a long time ago. Then I went to Minneapolis, where I arrived with no winter coat and no closed-toe shoes. And really, I still had an inability to drive a car. I did not know what a defroster was. It was a train wreck, but I survived 2 years as a reporter in Minneapolis. Then I ended up in Philadelphia. And after a year and a half there, I ended up in New York. I was a news anchor and reporter at WCBS TV in New York for 8 years. Then a friend of mine got a job in LA. He recommended me. I came out to Los Angeles in 1990 as a news anchor next to a legendary broadcaster here by the name of Jerry Dunphy, working at the Paramount Studios, which was, I have to say, one of the highlights of my life. I actually had a good parking lot on Paramount Lot, and I was there for 12 years. That's a good run, 12 years, and new management came in, and so I jumped over to a very tabloid show called Celebrity Justice. Now, along the line, I interviewed Howard Lyman when I was still at KCAL TV. And he's the one who really changed my life because I was a vegetarian by that point. I had recently gotten sober, so I had a measure of clarity where I could hear things. And also I was saying to myself, I do want to align my values with my actions. When you're drinking, you can sit at a bar, I love animals, and I want to help them. But you don't really do anything. And so my message to any activist watching, if you've got a drinking or a drug problem, clean it up so you can help the animals, or other things like eating disorder, codependency, the invisible addiction. I wrote a book called Addict Nation about our addictogenic culture. Pretty much everybody's hooked on something. Figure out what it is and get over it. And those who don't have any addiction, likely they are codependent, which means you're addicted to the person who does have the problem. I interviewed Howard Lyman, who, of course, was the fourth-generation cattle rancher who wrote Mad Cowboy. He went on Oprah. He spilled the horrible secrets of the cattle industry, and she said, that just stopped me cold from eating another burger. She was sued by the cattlemen. She won, but he was famous for a while there, and I interviewed him, and afterwards he and his publicist walked up to my cubicle, and they said, we hear you're a vegetarian, and I said, yes, and they said, do you eat dairy? And I kind of hung my head because he had just told us about the horrors, babies ripped from their mothers, boys shot or left in veal crates. And I said, yes. And then he said, liquid meat, right at my nose.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you, Howard Lyman. If he had been polite and just said, well, I think maybe you should, I wouldn't have heard it. But when he said liquid meat like that, So of course now I go around all over the place and I go liquid meat to people and they throw me out of their homes.
How does that work?
Yeah.
No, that's good.
I could continue on forever, so.
No, and you touched as well on your kind of addiction and writing books. You wrote a book as well called I Want, my journey from addiction and overconsumption to a simpler, honest life. I mean, and you talk about, becoming sober, coming out as gay and going vegan. I mean, was it in that order that those things happened?
Getting sober, going vegan, and coming out as gay. Yeah. And, just to wrap up the career, I was able to start doing animal rights when I was at this tabloid show called Celebrity Justice because celebrities hated us. And our whole goal was to try to get celebrities on camera and they would literally run from us. So I started working with PETA, and PETA had so many celebrities who were willing. They loved animals and had causes so much that they were willing to literally push their publicists aside to talk to me about their causes. The best example, Robert Redford literally pushed aside his publicist because he wanted to tell me about the military sonar impacting the whales. And the publicist was like, oh my God, do you realize who you're talking to? But I got a one-on-one with Robert Redford. So we won a couple of Genesis Awards for that. And then when I got to CNN, I had my own show on CNN Headline News, HLN, for 6 years. I said to them, would you mind if I did a little animal segment once a month? And they went, no, we don't. They probably thought I was going to do pet adoptions. Well, right away, I started doing hardcore animal rights. I started showing pig gestation crates and tail docking and interviewing pretty much all of the leaders in our movement for 6 years, every Friday for about 4 minutes. So we reached, I would say, quite possibly 100 million people over the 6 years. And that, I think, is, one of my, something I'm most proud of, let's put it that way. And then when that show ended, I didn't want to stop. I decided I'm going to focus, just like I did that animal segment once a week, I'm going to do it every day or 2 or 3 times a day on social media. And now we've ended up with our own streaming network, the world's first and only free vegan animal rights streaming television network, which is right behind me on the screen on my Samsung TV.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of content on there, isn't there, on Unchained TV? You've got lots of different formats for how the content's presented. There was Pig Little Lies and, pot-bellied pigs living in Hollywood, but you've done a lot of work over the years as well about, the link between industrial animal agriculture and the climate crisis and lots of different things. And how is it to see that kind of grow?
Well, we've got about 1,500 videos, and I can just even show you some of them, like right behind me, as you see. There's Moby's latest movie. We've got documentaries. Most of the organizations, we've got a lot of nature videos as well. International Vegan Film Festival has given us a lot of their films. It goes on and on and on. We're about to, as soon as I get off here, I'm going to be working on starting the first Spanish language category. And we invite anybody who has content who wants to get it out there to a global audience to reach out to us. And if it's vegan, if it's animal rights, we will put it up there. And so reach out to DM me on Unchained_TV, or there's a million ways to reach me. My name without the hyphen at yahoo.com, Jane at UnchainedTV.com. This is a community app. I run a nonprofit. This is a nonprofit. All the videos are 100% free, and we're almost entirely volunteer run. So it's truly a labor of love. And one of the reasons I did it is that I was in mainstream media. And even though I managed to, by hook or by crook, do an end run and get some of this content on there, the advertisers are meat, dairy, and pharmaceuticals. They put the kibosh. Okay, they put the kibosh on all of this information. So I see organizations and protesters genuflecting, and I got this when I started going out after my show ended to actual protests, and they always said the same thing. Oh, the media was going to come, but there was a breaking news story. Come on, that's exactly what we say when we want to get out of a story. There's always a breaking news story, just like it's always cocktail hour somewhere, So that's one of the reasons I started this, is that so many people are producing great content. And they do the film festival circuit, but then where does it go? Film festival circuit, for the most part, unless you're at Cannes or, Toronto Film Festival, is pretty much a friends and family affair. It's not going to reach the general public. We want to reach the general public. And streaming has overtaken broadcasting cable as the number one way people are watching TV. So vegans and animal rights activists should have their own streaming network. And now they do.
No, it's true. I mean, in America especially, it's bad in the UK, but in America, it's like you say, they are under the control of meat, dairy, and the pharmaceutical industries as well. And it's that concentrated ownership that makes it very difficult, well, has historically made it difficult. And how do you see, Unchained TV growing, over the next 10 years? You've got this platform now, this amazing platform to reach people, but what's your kind of goals for the next 10 years with it?
Let me say, thanks to the ingenuity and the dedication of many volunteers, many of whom are high-tech people, we were able to do for $50,000 a streaming network. Well, CNN spent $100 million on their streaming network, CNN Plus, before they pulled the plug. And some streamers have spent billions of dollars. So we've sort of pulled off a bit of a miracle. And now, I think the first year, well, we did surpass the million mark with Pig Little Lies, which was the world's first reality show starring a family of pigs. If you do nothing else, go there and watch Pig Little Lies, because it's hilarious. And by the way, it's also on public television stations around the United States and Canada now. So some of our best work, our original content, is going to PBS. Like, we did an award-winning 21-episode cooking show called New Day, New Chef. And it has a lot of, Elaine Hendricks, Maggie Baird, Billie Eilish even did a cameo. Well, it's on Unchained TV, but it also has run on public television stations around the United States and Canada. So the sky's the limit. When we get really good content, we can find other platforms to share it with us as well. We're not about, we want something exclusively. I think that that's a carnist mentality, like a win-lose mentality. We're not about, we've got to make this for profit. No. We want to the world's not going to exist in 15 years if we don't get this out. It doesn't matter how much money you have if you can't walk across the street without passing out. What difference does it make?
That's a very good...
So we are growing. Yeah. And to answer your question, when we first started, I think people were kind of like, well, let's see how long this lasts, because there were some that came and went. And they might have tried very hard, but it's not easy. I have done many difficult things in my life. I covered trials where I can't even tell you. Michael Jackson, Jodi Arias, Casey Anthony. I mean, I've never done anything as difficult as starting the streaming network and getting it going. But thank God we have an amazing team. You can be part of this team. Anybody can be part of this team. You can become a monthly donor. You can give us content. You can contact me and say, I want to volunteer helping you upload videos. I want to volunteer by if you're an editor, if you're a videographer. Just the other day, we ran into a guy who says, I've been videotaping for XYZ company for years. I'm a vegan. Let me help you. I said, great. Come to the LCA, the Last Chance for Animals Gala for me, and videotape. We've got a lot of celebrities showing up. Then I don't have to pay a videographer. We are really volunteer run. I don't take a salary. I donate to this because it's so important. Streaming has overtaken broadcasting cable. And this is it's everywhere. People are watching in Croatia, in Latin America, in Asia, not in China, but pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the nature of the internet's so helpful as well. Just being able to share comments and clips and reach other like-minded people from across all over the world. So it's a very exciting time for the platform and for streaming content in general. Even Moby, when we spoke to him about his latest documentary, he was saying the exact same thing, that it needs to be free, readily available, to anybody and everybody to find this.
Yeah, and Moby gave us his documentary. Thank you, Moby. And of course, we have the classics like Earthlings, Sean Munson's, and Dominion. Now, 37% of people say they went vegan because of watching a documentary. The great thing about Unchained TV is you can download it on your phone and you can text any documentary to, the aunt who says she could never give up cheese, the neighbor who says, bacon, or in my case, a real life older neighbor who said, I'm sick. And I said, look, you got to start eating your veggies. And I texted him Forks Over Knives and he watched it.
Wow. Yeah, that's how you impact people, isn't it? Making their real world problems, tying it back in and showing them it. It's, yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. We'll talk later about Hogwood because that's a documentary that Viva's actually produced about pig farming in the UK, and it's pretty horrific. I don't know if you've seen that, but
Uh, no, I haven't. And that I want to raise another point. Another thing I'm trying to do is burst through the vegan echo chamber. I don't know about you, but I've gone to a million events, gazillion events, a lot, where we're watching horrific footage and I turn around and everybody in the audience is already vegan. So we don't need to see that. Other people need to see that. People who say, "Oh, I ethically source my meat," or bacon, or "Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, look, it's organic." We need those people to see it. So what I see is a big problem in our movement is that we're in a vegan echo chamber. We're talking to each other. I've been to conferences where we're all talking to each other. That's why I want to take these conferences and put them up on Unchained TV so other people can see them. I was just on the European Vegan Summit, and so many interesting things. There was a man who explained how, my God, 50% of the revenue coming in for meat and dairy is connected to government subsidies. In other words, it would collapse if it weren't for government subsidies. The very same entities that are purporting to want to solve the climate crisis are fueling the climate crisis with their subsidies to animal agriculture. And his stats were fantastic. And I'm like, the people need to hear this. So we have streamed the European Vegan Summit last year, and we're going to stream it this year again. And anything like, for example, not to put you on the spot, but I would love to have your podcast like a channel. What we do is take a sample from every organization like PETA, Mercy for Animals, Farm Sanctuary, Switch for Good, and they have their own channels, and we promote that. And so if you'd like to have your best of and have a channel on Unchained TV, we'd love that.
that's excellent. Yeah, and you're right about the vegan echo chamber. It does need to spread beyond the conversations that we have and the kind of infighting within vegans, because that's just not what people are interested in. They need to see veganism as something that's accessible, and they need to connect with it on their own, not just for us to be talking about it, to preaching to the choir. How do you see this kind of evolving? I mean, it's great. I love the idea of having like different sort of best ofs, as you say, from different charities and different things to promote that. But do you think it's possible in a very short amount of time to see people move, from a sort of smaller minority to a majority scale in terms of understanding the importance of veganism?
Well, there's 8.1 billion humans on the planet. We cannot talk to them all individually. We have to use mass media. And of course, social media is great. We're all over TikTok now. We're trying to do 20 hours a month. And I can't tell you, I'm literally going crazy because every time I cook lunch, I'm on TikTok. But it's important, and we're reaching the general public. Like I was just at the plant-based conference in Texas called the Best Plant-Based Conference, and there were great speeches. Dr. Joel Furman, Victoria Moran, who you've interviewed. And so I was shooting Victoria Moran's talk on my camera to edit it, but then I also put up my phone on TikTok. That got 10,000 views. I had 12,000 views by the end of the day on all of the conversations. That there were 215 people at the conference, most of whom are vegan, if not all. Well, the 12,000 people who saw it on TikTok, 99.9% are not vegan. So it's really important to use all social media, but we can't just rely on social media for a couple of reasons. One, the statistic 37% have gone vegan because of a documentary. We need long form content or longer form. Yes, maybe 30 seconds can change your life, but probably not. I'll give you an example. We decided to do a climate and sustainability category. So I'm uploading all these composting videos, and as I'm watching them, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm a hypocrite. I don't compost. Oh God, no. I am not, you know what? By the end of the third video, I was like, I'm starting to compost. And I pulled out a bucket and I put it in my fridge and I demanded our condo association get a green bin. And now I'm like the composting queen. That wouldn't have happened if I'd watched a 30-second video. It takes a little bit longer to get complex ideas like what exactly do you compost? Where does the compost go? Why is composting important? It takes a little while for those complex ideas to settle. And so I've seen 30-second videos on Instagram about composting, but it didn't do the trick. That's why I think it's really important to have a streaming network with long-form content. Earthlings is a film that has changed more people, I think, than anyone. Well, we can get anybody to at least get that in their phone. This is also available on all Samsung TVs, like the one behind me, or if you have an Apple TV device, a Roku device, or an Amazon Fire Stick. It's on all of those. So potentially it could reach like most of the world's population. If you include the phone, virtually all the world's population. But one thing we don't have.
I am great. And this is the
one of my chefs just started talking, sorry. But one thing we don't have is we don't have multi-million or billion-dollar marketing budgets. Like I was driving past the Beverly Center and I saw, the morning show, and they've got an electronic billboard the size of a house, up there advertising. And I'm like, wow, we don't have that kind of money. We're scraping it together to do our first billboard in Hollywood for a film that we're premiering that is going to be very exciting on November 24th. It's about fur. That's all I can tell you, but it's extraordinary. And I hope everybody tunes in for the premiere. This is a world premiere of this film on Unchained TV. So Tim Gunn is in it. Last Chance for Animals leaders, PETA leaders, Ingrid Newkirk. It's really dynamic. And it's on Unchained TV. And so what we need is the community to market. That's why I'm so excited to be talking to you today, because we don't have a multi-million-dollar budget to market. We need grassroots vegans to download the app. And again, you can download it. It's all free download on your phone or on any Samsung TV through the Smart Hub or on any TV with the Amazon Fire Stick, Roku, and it's also online. So you can go to UnchainedTV.com and you can sign up there. And so it's on all these platforms, but we do need the grassroots community to take ownership of it. If we all started sharing those videos, it could be equivalent to having a multi-million-dollar marketing budget.
Absolutely. I mean, you've already mentioned as well about leveraging kind of star power, that PETA did to do this as well. I mean, is that something that you look to do as well, to kind of unite yourselves as well as just grassroots vegans with certain celebrity names to help push that messaging out?
Yes, we are currently in production on a very exciting new series starring one of the Jenners, who is vegan, and his wife, and they are incredible. And I just looked at a trailer last night that is going to blow your mind. It's extremely exciting. And again, all of this is being done because people care and they want to save the planet and they want kids to be healthy. And, I was in the Fort Worth, Dallas airport, and I was literally surrounded as I flew home by some morbidly obese people who were younger than me being wheeled up. And then I saw right across from me a mother feeding nuggets like to her child. And I was like, this is not right. This is not right. All of these people are victims of a system, as Dr. Silas Rao said, and we did a documentary on him called Countdown to Year Zero. He's a brilliant systems analyst who says we have to switch to a plant-based culture globally by 2026 or we're in big trouble. He says we're all being factory farmed. The animals are being factory farmed. The workers in these warehouses that are falsely described as farms are being factory farmed. And the consumers are being factory farmed. They need us to get sick so they can feed us all these pills. So Big Pharma, which has the most lobbyists of any industry on Capitol Hill, and the meat and dairy industry They have corrupted the pillars of our democracy. The pillars of our democracy are government, legislative, executive, and judicial, and the media. And all four have been corrupted. And this is, decline and fall of the Roman Empire time. We've got to get, and the reason why the powers that be are so terrified of people getting the message, they don't care. Talk about fossil fuels all you want, because not everybody can go out and buy a Tesla. And half the kids, if you ask them, what's a fossil fuel, they wouldn't know. But when you can take the power back 3 times a day with your diet, that is a societal shift that will truly reinvent society 100%. And they're aware of that. The big banks are all into the factory farming. It's maintaining a system essentially of, a hierarchical structure. I was just reading Dr. Melanie Joy's book, How to End Injustice Everywhere. And, it's about this moral hierarchy. So animals can't count. Before that, it was other sorts of humans, like women, who didn't count, who didn't have bodily autonomy. So this is the ultimate, this revolution, which I'm in it for the animals, but I'm also in it to end world hunger, because we're feeding so much of our food to 80 billion animals we torture and kill every year, land animals, not including fish. I'm in it because I want to see wildlife extinction halted and reversed. We are down to 4% of mammal biomass is wildlife, while we've increased and grown livestock mammal biomass to 62%. We are destroying our planet, and the climate apocalypse is coming. And, have you seen that movie, Don't Look Up? It's like that. It's like, well, calm down, lady. Calm down. You're so strident. Just chill out. No. Our house is on fire, as Greta says.
Yeah, there's 20,000 species being killed off like every single year. And it's just like, what on earth is happening to the poor planet? It's like you say, from a health perspective, environmental, animal welfare, everything, it all ties in. But you're really right. I mean, in terms of the powers that be being frightened of people starting to think and join the dots and realize this. I mean, in the UK at the moment, there's a lot of claims in the press every day that veganism is suddenly a fad, and that sales are sort of stalling, and they cite certain companies like Beyond Burger. But they're doing this, it's almost like a smear campaign against veganism.
It is.
And yeah,
it's not almost like,
well, yeah,
it is.
And I mean, I'm guessing the States is probably even like worse in terms of this. But you know what? The fact that they're frightened and that they're having to do this is a good sign, because you realize people are waking up to this.
I was just at the Vegan Women's Summit in Brooklyn, which is what I loved about it. I've been in this movement since Howard Lyman said liquid meat. I thought I knew everybody. When I first started, the few vegan restaurants there were, I did know everybody. I was the only customer. I knew the chef, the cook, the waitress. Now I can't get a table. There's a new restaurant that opened near me, Planta Casina. It is en fuego. You cannot get a table. And it makes me so happy I'm like, yes, thank you that I can't sit right now, because all these other people, a lot of whom aren't vegan, are there. Well, Vegan Women's Summit's like that. I go in and it's like all these people, like, what are you doing? Oh, I've got a vegan handbag company. What are you doing? And yes, there was a table with cell-based meat. And frankly, I'm all for it. If you ask a cow, who's had its tail cut off and dehorned and all the other tortures and babies ripped away, well, would you rather that, or would you rather a biopsy? I think they would say, go do the biopsy. I'm not minimizing it. I think I've also interviewed people who are doing bioidentical meat, which obviously would be the ultimate solution, where they copy the DNA sequencing and they don't have to use an animal at all. But I'm saying, whatever brings the least suffering, whatever reduces the suffering the most. So there was they call it cultivated meat. That the studies have shown that's the best term, cultivated meat table there. But the amazing thing was there were so many people that I didn't know, and that made me so happy. Just a whole slew of people. And I do feel my personal prediction, and what do I know, but I think that three things will ultimately converge, hopefully, to hit the tipping point. One is Mother Nature. Mother Nature is mad. There's a tick that's making people in the United States allergic to meat. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't.
It's sweeping through. Oh, yeah. There's a tick, literally, that's making people. She tried with the pandemic, but people didn't get the message. Okay? Either way, if you think it started in the Wuhan market, they were torturing animals. If you think it started in the Wuhan lab, they were torturing bats. Either way, they were torturing animals. That's why we have a pandemic. And most of these viruses are coming from, they're zoonotic, they're from animals. So Mother Nature's trying to send us a message. We didn't get it. Now she's trying the ticks. Well, last summer, there was a TikTok video, which of course mainstream media didn't pick up on, of all these cows dead with their legs straight up in the air in Texas. Somebody went and just went like this as they were driving. Thousands of cows. They died from the heat and the drought. And, you know, I work closely with Renee King Sonnen, the founder of Rowdy Girl Sanctuary in Texas, who's an amazing woman who's coming out with a book. She's got a documentary film called Rowdy Girl. She truly is a game changer because she talks that language. She talks just like a rancher because her husband was a rancher and she made him turn his ranch into a vegan sanctuary. And now he's vegan too. She's great. And she says, you know, I talk to her all the time. She goes, you know, it's a drought. Last night, she told me, we haven't had rain for 5 months. And she said, our well's having trouble now because we're pumping so much. Well, Mother Nature is going to make it virtually impossible to continue the type of farming that we're doing. The only thing that's propping it up is the government insurance. Anytime these animals drown in these warehouses called concentrated animal feeding operations, the government just, here, like they're widgets, we're going to replace them. And the fact is, it's going to become untenable. It really will. I know China's trying to build skyscrapers where they can keep all these pigs, which is so sick. I can't even, but it's all sick. It's all sick. And I would say every person who's vegan, become an activist. Become an activist. Stop just talking to other vegans or your grandmother. Let's get out there. Let's use social media and use the power of streaming to get this message to 8.1 billion people.
Amazing. I mean, what do you think else is going to happen? You've mentioned there that, you know, Mother Nature's angry and that's one of the three things that are going to happen. You know, what else do you see? Because we are at a crucial time right now. It's now or never, isn't it? Let's be honest.
It is. So you have Mother Nature making it harder to do this farming. Then you have the rise of cultivated meat. I'm sorry, but I have talked to so many people. I have a lot of vegans in my family, but some aren't. I mean, I've talked to neighbors, friends, people I've known for 45 years who are otherwise decent people. They must have their pound of flesh. For those people that cannot seem to process, even though in other areas of their lives, they're very compassionate and highly intelligent, I say give them the cultivated meat. You know, it's kind of like it's an addiction. I can't explain it. It's irrational. And that's where I think cultivated meat comes in. But then I think for the other people who are more open-minded, we have to continue to increase the sophistication of plant-based alternatives. Now, you're right. There is, according to an expert who was speaking at the Vegan Women's Summit, a war room the size of Fox News in Colorado, where the meat industry just spits out all this stuff about how horrible plant-based alternatives are. They consider them a threat. It's a sign that yes, people can't. I was walking by the other day at a fast food joint and I was like, ugh. And then I heard the woman say, yeah, and that'll be an Impossible Burger and an Impossible Burger. And I thought, oh, good. Yeah, okay. So I don't think we can thumb our noses or please don't repeat meat industry talking points. You know, I go to these conferences and everybody's like, these things are terrible. Come on. You know, processed meat is officially cancer causing.
It is, yeah, carcinogenic one, isn't it? It's first-class carcinogenic. Yeah. It's
right. So let's not go around demonizing Beyond Meat burgers. Nobody's suggesting you should only eat Beyond Meat burgers, okay? But it's a great transition food for people who are getting the message. And then I think, you know, the third thing is Mother Nature. So I think those three things will converge. And we know that the chicken is being sold in Singapore, the cultivated chicken. There's actually, I think his name is Jose Andres, a famous chef here, is serving some cultivated meat in the United States. It's going to happen. The question is, will it happen in time, at the scale, and at the price that is necessary? Well, our government should be investing in it.
But we know that that's not going to happen, is it? This is a scary thing. It's the only way they'll do it is if they can see it as profitable. I mean, right now, it's the same in the UK as in the US. You know, they're getting subsidies, you know, the meat and the dairy industry. And actually, yeah, they couldn't survive without it. So we need those people to look at responsible, like better farming as well, like for long-term sustainable options rather than just what they're doing, which is mass slaughter. And you know, in the US, you guys as well, you've got the zero grazing, you know, these huge factory farms of just animals, and it's so cruel, isn't it? And this is spreading now to Europe as well.
And Latin America, I mean, it's horrific. You know, I could use a lot of cliches. It's always darkest before the dawn. It always seems impossible until it's done. That's Nelson Mandela, I believe. But the point is that things have to get really bad sometimes before they get better. Use the addiction metaphor, you have to hit bottom. Like, I hit bottom making an ass of myself at a party in Hollywood by being drunk. Okay, some people have a much lower bottom. They got to kill 15 people on the highway driving the wrong way. You know, what's our bottom when it comes to factory farming as the Western culture? And another thing I think that's a very, very powerful perspective, if we can make it take off, is that the meat and dairy industry is food colonialism. You know, cows are not indigenous to the Americas. The first cow came over on Columbus's second voyage, according to a course I took. And the first pig came over in 1537 on the boat of a conquistador. So, in terms of, and then you have the global majority being lactose intolerant. So the BIPOC community, if there's a recognition that this is food colonialism and a form of oppression, and that every time you eat a fast food hamburger, you are supporting the very forces in the world that are oppressing you, then I think we could really hit the tipping point. You take one major segment of the public and you pull that out, and the house of cards collapses. And I also think we need music. You know, I think it was Joan Baez who said, you know, the anti-war movement was just a political movement until music entered the picture, and then it became a global cultural phenomenon. So we also have a music channel where we put up a whole bunch of songs, but we need people to start singing about this, just like back in the 60s and 70s, people were writing anti-war songs.
Yeah, I mean, even things like Hurricane, you know, Bob Dylan, more of that kind of political focus kind of side of things. And I think as the kind of systems are failing at the moment and falling down, and it's quite clear to see that they are across everything, health, education, everything, there's more and more people starting to think of ways to combine to make things better. I mean, for you, do you feel like, I mean, I don't think like all hope is lost yet. It's very hard not to when I look at the news and I see what's going on. But I think that, yeah, like you say, when you hit rock bottom, people will find a way to kind of come together, hopefully, to make improvements. And I think once that becomes profitable, and sure, then you'll get corporations or governments trying to claim it as their own ideas, or to get, you know, give it some backing maybe. But that's just, you know, kind of a cynical perspective for me, but...
Well, I mean, I think that the big meat companies are also investing in meat alternatives, including, I believe, cultivated meat and plant-based alternatives, because I think they see the writing on the wall too. I mean, the climate apocalypse is going to worsen very, very dramatically, and we're already seeing it in real time. I mean, look at and the media. What's so frustrating to me is that the mainstream media does what I call catastrophe porn. All the bodies piling up from the floods in Libya, and all these people and migrants who escaped a repressive regime, but now they're dying in wildfires and blah, 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 blah. Oh, horror, horror, horror. But when the New York Times just the other day published the solution in an article that was not the lead story, it was kind of buried. And essentially it said, an Oxford University study shows that heavy meat eaters, which is most Americans, can reduce their emissions footprint by 75% by switching to a plant-based diet. Nobody picked it up. So they do catastrophe porn to make people crazy. Now there's a new term, climate anxiety, and everybody's, I'm nervous. The beach is right over there. I just walked my dogs on the water this morning. One tsunami. This is officially where I live, a tsunami zone. So everybody's nervous. I have friends who live, in the Hollywood Hills, wildfires. And so everybody's got this climate anxiety, but there's a solution staring us right in the face that they refuse to report on. We could literally solve most, if not all, of the world's problems by switching to plant-based. Let's run down climate change, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger in the third world, if I don't know if that's a politically correct term anymore, but places where people are starving. And then obesity, 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese here. And then you've got ocean desertification, ocean dead zones, water pollution, drought, and depression. There's a new study that says that processed food leads to depression. I was just watching this on one of the big networks 2 days ago. And of course, they never said meat. They said processed food, and then they showed a picture of chips. Well, we know what the biggest processed food is. Deli slices, bacon, hot dogs, and they can't mention that. They're scared to mention it. A very well-known network news anchor went to the Vegan Women's Summit. I won't mention names. But then a couple of weeks later, and she saw everything there. A couple of weeks later, she's doing an interview and she's talking to two quote-unquote environmentalists, end quote, and saying, but what can we do? Is there anything we can do? She knows because she was just at the Vegan Women's Summit.
But they're scared.
Did not
They're
mention
scared.
it.
Yeah. I don't know why people do that. I mean, there was even...
Well, because you don't have to have somebody come up and knock on your door and say, hey, look at the commercials. We don't want to offend our advertisers. Everybody knows that. Doesn't take a brain surgeon to look at the commercials and figure out who's keeping the lights on.
I mean, when you talk to people like, you mentioned the Oxford University study and, it's Professor Joseph Paul and people like that. Would you ever consider maybe putting, like on the chat on Unchained TV, like talking to these professionals to give them that voice to just focus on one of the issues?
She wanted to say hi.
Hi.
Wednesday. Okay, now
Wednesday.
go. She was jumping up.
That's all right.
And I listened to her and said, okay, you want to be a part of it? Come on up. I'd love to do those interviews. I've got to get those people to be willing to come on. Lately, we've had a nice shift. When we first started Unchained TV, I think some people wondered, how long is this going to be around? Because there are a couple who came and went. Well, this is going to stay, okay? I don't care if I have to drain the last dollar of my 401k, but we have donors, and we have a lot of monthly donors. We've got more than 100 monthly donors who are giving every month for the $10 a month, $25 a month, $100 a month. That keeps us going. So now we've turned a corner. All of a sudden in the last month, people are inundating me with content they want to put up. Last night, I stayed up till like 12:30 at night uploading a great interview with two plant-based doctors and Chef AJ, who's a famous American vegan chef, just sent me a great 54-minute pilot where she makes all sorts of dishes. And somebody else sent me something else, and somebody else sent me something else. And it's like, oh, we've turned the corner. Now people are, instead of me asking, can you please send us a video? Now people are like inundating me, wanting to put it up because they sense that, yes, this is here to stay. And we are, we have integrity. We're not here to make money. We're here to get the word out. So we're starting to see a real uptick, not only in downloads and views. In August, we had 90,000 minutes viewed, which is a lot when you consider 90,000 minutes people out there, the general public, spent watching our content. That's changing hearts and minds.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm going to round it up now, Jane, because I'm conscious of the time, but thank you so much for talking to us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I love what you do. I love what you do. I was watching some of your podcasts, and your viral videos are fantastic. So way to go, Viva.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite hard to make sure we've got them, before the ASA bans them in some circumstances, but we put them out there, and that's, so people can see them as quickly as possible. So
yes,
we're going to keep trying to do that as much as we can. But thank you so much for coming on today, Jane, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
My delight. Thank you.